Thanks for being with us today on Shine FM for another edition of Journey Living with Shannon Meyer. The foundation of Journey Living Ministries is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Journey Living is a radio broadcast featuring the Bible teaching of Shannon Meyer. Shannon's passion is to help women walk with God through the trials and challenges of life. Speaking from her own life experiences and a biblical foundation, Shannon offers women hope that God does have a plan, even when we don't see it. Now here's Shannon with today's teaching.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Journey Living. I'm Shannon Meyer, and I am so excited to have another friend in the studio today. I'd like for all of you to welcome my great friend, Nada. She comes from Bell Fountain. She was a teacher that I worked with years ago, and it's funny how God crossed your paths later in life and how he orchestrates those who you may know in another season and how he'll bring them about. So welcome, Nada.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Nada and I worked together years ago at the Bell Fountain Middle School, and that was a great time. Never in a million years would you have thought we'd be doing a radio show together, would you, Nada?
No.
But you know, just how funny how God works in his mysterious ways is that as I have learned more about Nada and her life and her testimony is that we have something very similar in common. And we both come from childhoods that were tough. They were a struggle. And, you know, for those of you that have had a tumultuous childhood or an abusive childhood or just a struggle, you know that those wounds carry a long way and into your adult life. And a lot of times we think, well, once our childhood's over, that, oh, wow, we're done with that. Thank God I can move on and be an adult. And that's just not true, is it?
No.
It just carries through. And so today, Nada and I are just going to talk about our own lives. We're not going to talk really specifics because we just want to make it general for all of you out there, too, that maybe struggle. And if you know somebody who had a difficult childhood, be sure to go get them and have them tune in or tune in later to my website and just be sure to encourage them to listen because I know that God is in this and that he's going to just give a word in due season for somebody that may need healing today. So I just want to dig right in and just talk to Nada a little bit and ask you, Nada, some questions that I know we both probably and everybody else that's come from a troubled childhood that may just share with us. So what's been the hardest part to get over the strongholds and bondage that carry over from your childhood? How have you, what do you find is the hardest part in all of that?
Well, I think for me, the realization that it's not something that can just end. It's far-reaching into adulthood, and it does affect your relationships with people. It affects your trust of people. And it has scars to it that you feel forever. And getting past that is really difficult. Have you had success, though? Do you feel like you've had success? I've made a lot of progress. I've had success, but it's on levels, and it's a process. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of time. Mm-hmm. Not quick, which I'm not a very patient person, so that's hard for me to realize, but it's difficult to share. I think that's another, it's kind of a tie between the realizing and sharing because you never are quite sure what people will do with what you share. Are they going to treat you differently? Are they going to look at you differently? Are they going to think, oh, yeah, right? But that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this for my own reasons, to glorify God for my progress and where he's put me and what I've been able to accomplish. And I'm doing it to help others that may be going through the same thing. Yeah, for sure. I think we make ourselves, one of the hardest things for me is to make yourself vulnerable again and to open yourself up to be wounded where you've already been, immensely wounded. I always say, when you share maybe a deep, dark secret or just, you lay yourself out maybe to share with somebody and they run with it in the wrong way and hurt you worse. I always say it's like backing the salt truck up to the wound. Somebody just ripped off the scar and they backed up the salt truck and just unloaded and it just begins to bleed. So,
sharing that with other people is a private matter. And that's why today we're not going to go so much into our personal stories, but I think it's really important for someone to hear that you can get over a stronghold and you can get over bondage. And with God's grace and mercy, he has brought us both a really long way, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What have been some of the activities, you've talked about it was a process. What do you find has brought you healing, Nada?
Well, paramount is my belief and faith in God, because I wouldn't have the strength to forgive, to achieve if I didn't have that. So that would be first and foremost, but also supportive people in my life who support me and who love me no matter what, which started at a very young age and are still my friends today. And resources. Counseling helped me a lot to see why I react the way I do sometimes.
Now, did you go to a Christian counselor or secular?
Yeah.
I think that's important to make sure you're under godly counsel, don't you?
I think so, too. I think it really helps you understand better what's going on, and I think that person has the same perspective I do about life in general, and that makes a huge difference.
Well, God's the covering of all your healing, and they notice that and recognize that, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, how did you forgive those that have wounded you? How did you find, we say forgive and forget, and everybody say, well, that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Have you forgiven? I guess would be my first question.
I have forgiven some of the people, but I have not forgiven everyone. I'm still working on it.
Process.
First, I think you have to have the will, and I didn't have the will for a long time. Then once I decided I had the will, I asked God for strength to go ahead and be able to forgive. And then I had this little ritual I call my little forgiveness ritual, where it started with just being able to even say the words, I forgive you, because I couldn't say them in the beginning when I didn't want to, and my heart wasn't in it. So I just practiced saying the words over and over.
Wow.
And that took a long time to be able to do that. Then once I got through that, I kind of graduated from that phase up into the next phase, which was being able to say them with feeling, like I meant it. And so I'm to that point. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone to tell. But
they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone. They've passed away. So, but for me, I need to do it for me.
Sure. Because
I need the freedom from it, and I need peace and joy in my life. And I think that's what God intended for us to have.
Absolutely. And I've heard people have gone even to like the graveside of one who has hurt, and maybe even written a letter and read it to the person who hurt them. And there's some freedom in that, and just releasing that and saying those words. And I love what you said, that you just spoke it over time and you didn't always feel it. And eventually, I think what is very true is when we speak God's truth and his will for our life, whether our flesh is there or not, it eventually will catch up.
Yeah.
Usually it fights us in the beginning, doesn't it? And then, but your feelings did come along, and we know that our emotions are fickle, so we can't always count on them. But one thing, the other word I heard you say is you decided. And I think that is that's the difference of an overcomer and one who struggles, because you made a viable decision to forgive. And I think, there's not even so much willpower in that. You had the will to do that, but the very first step, I think, is you made the decision. You in your mind made the decision. And I truly believe the difference of those who overcome and those that stay defeated are the ones that refuse to decide to make a difference. You can either sit and wallow in it, or this is my life. This is my plot in life. I'm not sure. I'm sure you have a ton of questions for God when you get to heaven, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And you're like, well, why did I get this? And why did this happen? And I think when we stay focused on that, that's kind of sometimes a pride issue, because we're so focused on me. God, why me? Why me? When God's like, you know what? Maybe I didn't cause this, but I allowed it. And I'm going to use it for my glory if you'll just let me. So I love that you said that you decided to do that. One thing you did talk about earlier, too, was your scars. How do you deal with those scars and the aching when those just, maybe someone can hurt you. Maybe someone can talk about somebody in your family that's hurt you, and like the hair just stands up on your And you know what I mean? It's just,
yeah.
How do you deal with that ongoing ache from a wound that maybe hasn't fully healed yet?
I do several different things. Like if it's a matter of thinking about what someone has said and it's beyond that point of I'm not going to respond to them, if I get really down about it, really depressed, I will allow myself one self-pity day. I get to one self-pity day.
One pity party for you.
Pity party with pajamas. And I have one day that I can do that. Then after that's over, I usually write in a journal or I read something positive. I will look up resources that I have to give me strength. Posters I've printed out that say exactly what I need to be reminded of, things like that really help me get focused back on track. Because you're going to have, I think, no life is perfect, and you're going to have those days when you just feel crushed in, and you just need to allow yourself to feel that way. You have to acknowledge your feelings and go on.
Sure. And I know we allow anger sometimes to rise up in us, and I'm sure, have you dealt with the anger part of the process? It's part of the grieving process, of what you didn't have, and there's 5 stages, of course. And how did you get through those angry times? Well, the angry times
I'm still getting over that, but I don't have the rage. There wasn't just anger, it was rage. And I remember being surprised when I started feeling angry because I didn't understand what was going on, why I felt that way. Because no matter what happened in my life, I felt angry.
You were just an angry woman?
Yeah, I was just angry all the time. In fact, one day my husband said, well, you're going to be angry no matter what, so it won't matter. And that was true. I was, and I didn't understand why. But it's because I shoved what happened back so far in my mind. I didn't want to acknowledge it, accept it, and do anything about it. And because of that, it came back. It surfaced in anger and rage.
I often teach. Yeah, it is scary because I often teach whatever you bury alive never dies, and I think that is just so profound in the sense that I think if we can just stuff down life, our kids, our marriage, our work. Busy. I know as women, we just busy ourselves to a ridiculous level that we don't have to deal with it. And I know there was a woman in one of my Bible study classes one time that I never would have thought in a million years she was an angry person. And one day just exposed herself of some things, and it just came out, just like what you're talking about. I know I struggled with anger too. I just was mad all the time. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And God just showed me the root of this is anger. And I know a lot of people suffer from depression. And I'm not talking clinical depression. I'm just talking that depression. We go in and out. And a lot of that comes, the root, a lot of psychologists will vouch for this, root of depression comes from anger. So if you suffer from, the momentary depression or a week, or I'm not talking the medical depression, so don't get me wrong here, but go and look and see, is there something that happened in your life that you're angry about, that maybe has happened and you just feel, obviously you were violated and you feel misused or abused. What do we do and how do we give that to God? I know in Ephesians 4:26 it says, in your anger, do not sin. And God says, I know you're going to be angry. But with that comes, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, because the devil will gain a foothold. And I spoke about this a couple weeks ago about regaining our territory. And it is so true that when we continue to be angry, and if this is no more motivation than anything, don't give Satan that foothold. Would you agree? I mean, did he?
Oh yeah, he definitely had a foothold in me, because I remember one time my anger when it had turned into rage. I was mad about something. It was so insignificant. I don't remember what it is anymore. But I got so mad that this voice came out of my mouth, and I knew my mouth had opened, and I knew that I was talking, but it was not my voice.
Oh, wow.
It was this deep, nasty, growly, snarly voice.
Really?
And I was yelling at my husband, and for the first time ever, I saw fear in his eyes. And I had never seen that before. And I immediately, when I said it, I thought, inside I was thinking, oh no, that sounds like the devil. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I didn't say what I was thinking, because I'm sure right then if I would have said, Jesus, cast ye out this devil, my husband would have beat it for the door, and I probably would have never seen him again.
But you saw where he got a foothold and he manifests an area of your life as a Christian.
Yes.
That's the thing I think we as Christians think, oh, that's for someone who's demonic or, worshiping Satan. And that is just, we give Satan a foothold. And I know since I've been teaching and studying this area, and I don't want to give him too much recognition, but, because we don't want to put him where he doesn't deserve, but we have to recognize what's coming out of our mouth. God says you can't bless and curse out of the same mouth. And, our words are a miracle waiting to happen. And do we destroy someone else's life by our words? And I think he just plays us like a fiddle with our words, and our emotions and our feelings get the best of us. And so what a great picture analogy. And you recognize that. So did that scare you enough? What was the outcome?
Oh, yeah, that scared me plenty.
Did it?
Yes, it did. And I had already been throwing things, not at people, but I had been throwing things because I would get upset. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I needed to work on it. And in counseling, I said, what is going on? Why am I so mad, so angry?
And was there revelation in your counsel?
Oh, yeah. She said that's the devil will grab a hold of whatever he can get a hold of. And that was probably him working through you.
Sure.
And you need to, acknowledge that and say, Jesus, be rid of the devil. Get the devil out of here.
Yeah, sure. I've been there, done that. I've told him, get behind me, get away, get out. You're not allowed to stay in this house, and anything and everything I can say. But I do believe it's real important for us to recognize where it comes from. Find out the root to your anger for sure. I know a lot of people are listening and probably going, you have no idea what I've gone through, and I have every right to be angry, and you probably do, but that is not God's will for your life. And if you would hand that over to him, he can just make a beautiful message out of your mess. But we have to, and in that Ephesians 4:26, that's all on us when it says, do not sin in your anger. Do not let the sun go down. And that talks about you. That's all you. That's not saying, well, my husband, my kids made me do it. No, God's saying, you don't do this, and don't you dare let him get in there. Well, let's move on just a little bit here. We're going to run out of time. There's so much I want to talk to you about today, Nada. I told you the time goes real fast. What do you feel like? I know we go through this healing process, and do you think you'll ever be completely healed while you're here on this earth? Do you ever feel like you're ever going to arrive, or will you always be a victim or wounded? I know a lot of people sometimes get caught up. We attach our name with a comma. How do you what do you think? Do you think you're going to get healed? Do you think, what's your process?
I think my goal is to be healed. That would be my goal. Mm-hmm. Whether I will be completely healed or not, I think only God knows the answer to that. I'm on a journey, and that's something that I would like to do, but it takes time, and I've made so much progress that I think it's more possible now than ever. But it just depends. I'll have to see what happens.
We have to just let God work through it.
Yep.
One thing I think God doesn't, a defining moment does not have to be our defined future.
Exactly.
And we can be reminded of our past, but it does not have to define our future. And, let's just say you're a recovering alcoholic. I have a gal in my Bible study that she's been sober for 20 years, but she'll still call herself she was an alcoholic. And I said, you are absolutely no longer. That was a time in your life. And the same, we can sometimes say, well, I was abused as a child. And that's why I say we wear that as a label and a tag. And God doesn't call us to be a victim. He calls us to be victorious. Do bad things happen? Yeah, absolutely. We live in this fallen world that's absolutely terrible, and Satan takes every whim at us that he can. But just because an event happens does not have to define us. And just speak a little bit of how what has happened to you has made you into the person who you are today, for the good and for the bad.
Well, God has given me tools to work through all this. Like, that's the amazing part of all this. I had them all along, but I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I had them. I didn't have enough belief in myself. And he's given me determination. He's given me drive. He's given me a sense of humor. I can be totally down, and I can still think of jokes. I have no idea why. It's ridiculous, but I can. And I have those tools, and that's helped me accomplish. And my journey in faith has helped me because my faith has grown. I've seen tons of miracles from God and ways he's worked in my life since I've started this faith journey. And I'm excited about that. And it gives me the energy to keep on going and to accomplish much.
Great. How would you say that you have been able to minister to other people?
I think some people have told me I'm an example because of because I have a lot of physical issues. I've tried really hard not to let them define me. So some people say that. Other people tell me that I have a way of comforting them by bringing them food or just sending them a note or spoiling my group, my Saturday morning Bible group. They say I spoil them. Sure. So those are ways.
You just are a great example of God using someone who's been through something. I think what's really important when we talked about self-pity a little bit ago, when we stay in that spirit of self-pity, we miss some amazing blessings because God will use you to minister, to other people. We've been around people who have lost children and buried children, and we have as well. And you just don't realize who will minister to the next person. You think, God, why would you take my child from me? And that's the worst nightmare any parent could ever have. But God will use those moments in time for you to become a blessing. And I can remember very specifically a time in our life when my oldest daughter's classmate was killed his freshman year. And I had been given a ring that said, "Pray hard," and I had it on my pinky. And during the recession line to receive his parents, God said, "Give her this ring." And I don't know if she was a believer or not. And I just slid it on her finger and said, "God told me to give this to you." And it wasn't, I don't know how many years later, probably 7 or 8, the roles were reversed. And now she was in the funeral line to receive us and come to us, and she slipped that ring back on my finger and said, "This is for you now." And at the time I was ministering to her and her loss, and we hadn't lost our son, and now many years later she now is in my line, the funeral, and tragedies on both families. But God will use you in a powerful way if you'll just let him. But you got to get out of the way to do that. And I know, I love what you said about you allowed one day for a pity party. And that's okay because, I think there are days, Jesus even went away, I think when he was tired and he couldn't take anymore, and he went away to be with the Father. And I think those are good things, to go and be quiet, go to rest. Maybe you need a hot bubble bath. Maybe you just need to disconnect completely, soak in what he wants to tell you. If you need to nurse your wounds, nurse them. But then you said, but one day. And that's all I allowed myself. Again, you made another decision to say, yes, I'm hurt here, but I'm moving on. So speak a little bit to the fact that you are a living minister. I don't think we need, a seminary degree. You are a living minister because of your past and how that's just reaching so many other hurting people. Your Saturday morning Bible studies, are those more relevant to everyone's life because you can speak truth to them from some of the things that have happened in your past?
I do. I offer that, but all of the people, there are only 7 of us, and everyone has their own story. Everyone has a way that they minister to people and to our group, and our group has become a really big support group for each other. And that makes it, when you have a place where you can freely share, say, whatever, and you know that they understand you and they're going to keep loving you no matter what you say, it changes so much. I think everybody needs to have a place like that where they can be heard for who they are, and they don't have to put a mask on.
A safe place.
Yeah, a safe place to be. But yeah, we all minister. I host it, but I don't do all the talking. We all share. We all answer questions. We all look at whatever it is we're studying. Right now, it's the really bad women in the Bible.
I'd love to study that. It's good. I bet it is. You said there were only 7 people, and what kind of jogged my mind was, Jesus changed the world with 11 disciples. After Judas was gone, and they changed the world. And the church of what it is today. And I used to think, you have to have big numbers. And, I remember God saying very specifically, he said, I didn't call you to count my sheep. I called you to teach my sheep. And that was so profound for me when my ministry got started, or even when I would go speak, I'd be like, well, I wonder how many people are here. God's like, no. And I often think about that, because one person is just like that ripple in the pond can just change the world. And regardless of where you've come from, or, your background or your history, or maybe you have just gotten a really raw deal in life and you're just stumbling through thinking, I am never going to make it because of where I've come from. That's absolutely not true. Look where Jesus came from. He came from a stable with a bunch of animals. I mean, it's up to us, and he has put that in us. Before we close today, Nada, I just want to ask you what you think about this one word, and I just want to touch on it briefly, is the word pardon. And pardon is not that you're not guilty, but pardon is when you are guilty and you just don't have to pay the consequence. Would you say that you have pardoned anyone in your past that has hurt you?
Yeah, definitely.
And has that been healing for you?
Yes.
Brought help and healing. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things we have to realize, is that Jesus pardoned us too.
Right.
And we can't not be what God has already done. Jesus came to earth so he could experience everything we did. And our sin didn't determine our relationship with him, in the sense, because he went and pardoned our sin at the cross. That was all done and taken care of. So I guess, when I want to be feisty and I want to be mad and angry and how dare you, and you've destroyed my childhood, or I can't ever get this back. Jesus went to the cross and pardoned us for all of our sin, for our past, our present, and our future, even those sins that we've not even committed yet. Jesus says, I will pardon you for all of those sins. And so I figured your answer was yes, you had, because you're in a healing stage, aren't you? You're in a healing process, and the word process is so huge. I know I'm a here today, gone tomorrow type of person. Let's move in, move out, get it done. And when it comes to healing from your childhood, it is a lifelong process. It is a lifelong journey, like you said, and it is huge. And I think one thing we have to learn is to be patient, and be patient, one, with the Lord, and be patient with ourselves, isn't it? Because our childhood did not happen overnight.
Right.
And those things didn't all, for the most part, didn't manifest. Now, maybe someone's violation was in a one night. Maybe there was a rape or a molestation and it was a one-time deal. But even that process afterwards, and what you have become, has been over time. And just like everything else, what takes time to make also takes time to heal from. And it's the wonderful journey. And just speak to this as we close. Not that you would vote and raise your hand and say, yes, I want to do my life over, because most of us never would. Would you?
Not really.
Not really. But would you change those sweet times of fellowship with Jesus that it's just you and him in this process?
I don't think I should, and I don't think I want to, because that's part of who I am. Mm-hmm. That makes me the person I am. Mm-hmm. That makes me closer to God's will, mm-hmm. doing what he has willed for me to do in my life. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want to, and I don't need the devil back. So I'd have to say.
Yeah, I think the journey with him is so sweet. There's been dark times in my life that I certainly wouldn't ask for again, but I certainly wouldn't give him up for anything, because I've never known him more intimately. and so close to me as those times when he held me so close when there was nobody else and it was it's the dark stuff that you can't really share with everybody. And maybe it's just that conversation you and God alone have. And so, well, thank you, Nada, so much for being here today with us. Thanks for being vulnerable and just sharing your heart. It's always fun to have somebody in the studio with me. It's always more to have somebody so much more fun when they're live and in color than just my voice. So would you like to just end with anything today, some encouragement for someone who may be struggling from a childhood past or a childhood?
I guess I'd like to say, if you're keeping a secret still, because I did for a long time, if you are keeping a secret still, you need to get it out in the open, acknowledge it, deal with it, because you can't move on until you do. And I would encourage them to, in their safe place or with counseling, whatever it takes, get it out where you can deal with it, and then move on.
Things that are brought to the light, I think the enemy no longer has a hold on. And as long as he can keep you in the dark and let him control that, that's huge. And again, I'm glad you said, make sure it's good counsel. Pray about who you should go seek out. Don't just go to anybody. Make sure it's good counsel that's going to give you good feedback and biblical feedback. Please don't go on, well, what did Oprah think? Or, any of these people that are, America's favorites. Make sure it is biblical. And if you're not sure what they're telling you, get in the Word or go seek out somebody. God says, work out your salvation in fear and trembling, with the sense of you go and you keep finding out what it is that God has for you, and test the waters and test his word of, is this true from you, God? And he will show himself true, won't he? I mean, in our healing process, I know for myself, and I probably speak for Nada too, that he has always been faithful to us and to meet us right where we are in our darkest places.
Yep.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us today here again on Journey Living. We love having you. And I just want to thank again my friend Nada. Be sure to join us next week here on Thursday at 9 a.m. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week on Journey Living here at Shine FM.
Oh, no, you never let go. Lord, you never let go of me.
Thank you for being with us for this edition of Journey Living with Shannon Meyer. If you'd like to hear this program again or learn more about Journey Living Ministries, or even contact Shannon, her website is journeylivingministries.org. Shannon also teaches a Bible study for women on Tuesday nights at 7 at Union Station in Bellefontaine, and she's also available to speak at events. And we'd love for you to join us again next Thursday morning at 9 for Journey Living with Shannon Meyer.